Hello there, you're watching All 24 News World News Program. To the headlines. Zionist occupation forces commit atrocities at Kamal Adwan Hospital in northern Gaza. 50 martyrs, including doctors, killed in a bombing near the hospital, and dozens of martyrs and wounded in a Zionist bombing and raids across the Strip. The Zionist occupation violates ceasefire in Lebanon. Occupation airstrikes destroy houses in Yaroun and target towns in Bigha, Nabatia, and Upper Galilee. And Zelensky urges the West to accelerate military aid to Ukraine while Russia rejects temporary truces and demands permanent security agreement. Stay tuned to the details shortly after the break. Hello again and welcome back to the program. Zionist forces surrounded Kamal Adwan Hospital early Friday, ordering evacuation within 15 minutes. Communication with hospital staff was cut off as fires broke out in the archives department following the shelling. Booby-trapped robots were detonated and Palestinian homes near the hospital were set ablaze. Zionist forces perpetrate horrific massacres at Kamal Adwan Hospital, the last refuge for patients in northern Gaza, by targeting medical staff, forcing evacuations, and setting the hospital on fire, highlighting the ongoing genocide in the Strip for over a year. Usama Ayadi has more.
Several intensive care patients died in Kamal Adwan Hospital after the Zionist army launched another military onslaught on the northern regions of Gaza, setting fire to multiple sections of the medical facility. Sources affirmed that the fire engulfed the surgery, laboratory, maintenance, and emergency departments. The flames spread rapidly to other areas with no means to extinguish them, as civil defense teams remain non-operational.
Since the beginning of the day, Kamal Adwan Hospital has been the target of an intense military campaign aimed at forcing everyone inside to leave. There were approximately 350 people inside, including doctors, patients and civilians. A large number of patients who were able to walk and their companions, as well as a large number of doctors, were forced to evacuate the hospital and go to an unknown location.
Eyewitnesses reported that the Zionist military forcibly evacuated patients, the injured, medical staff and journalists from the hospital, while simultaneously launching missile strikes and firing live ammunition. The hospital is also the only operational medical facility in northern Gaza that provided critical medical services to over 400,000 citizens. Communication with those inside the hospital was completely cut off after the Zionist forces surrounded the building. Reports indicate that the army ordered the approximately 350 people inside, including 170 medical staff, together in the courtyard in preparation for a military raid.
We can confirm that the occupation forces set fire to all the facilities of Kamal Adwan Hospital, including the maintenance building, the central laboratory, the surgical departments, and the warehouses, and also destroy the electric generators, the oxygen station, the desalination stations, and the kidney dialysis department. The fire is still ongoing in the hospital.
The Kamal Adwan newest crime is one more proof of the Zionist stubborn acts of violating international laws and agreements. Palestinians only bear the brunt of the genocidal war imposed on them for more than a year, while the international community remains unable to impose a ceasefire nor a truce, despite the fact that the International Criminal Court issued arrest warrants for Zionist Prime Minister and former Defense Minister for war crimes and crimes against humanity in Gaza.
Meanwhile, Marwan Al-Hams, director of field hospitals at Gaza's Ministry of Health, stated that Zionist occupation aims to halt health services in northern Gaza He dismissed the occupation's claims about Kamal Udwan Hospital, holding them responsible for the lives of patients and medical staff there. Similarly, the Palestinian presidency condemned the Zionist occupation's burning of Kamal Udwan Hospital in Beit Lahia, calling it a grave violation of international law that protects medical facilities and personnel. The presidency emphasized that this crime is part of the occupation's broader efforts to displace Palestinians from their lands.
The presidency holds the occupation authorities fully responsible for the repercussions of this serious crime, which violates all relevant international agreements and conventions, calling on international health institutions, especially the World Health Organization, Doctors Without Borders, and international and humanitarian organizations to fulfill their duties to stop this crime committed against Palestinian medical sector and to activate international agreements to provide protection for medical personnel, patients, and the injured.
Hamas condemned the storming of Kamal Udwan Hospital and the surrounding massacres as Zionist war crimes carried out amid international inaction. The movement accused the U.S. administration of complicity in the Gaza extermination campaign and held both the occupation and the U.S. responsible for the safety of patients, the wounded, and medical staff. Hamas called for immediate action from the international community, the United Nations, and global actors to break the silence and address these atrocities. The Euro-Mediterranean Human Rights Monitor condemned the Zionist forces' storming of Kamal Udwan Hospital, describing it as part of the genocidal war against Palestinians. The organization highlighted the failure of international bodies to address the ongoing violations and called on the International Committee of the Red Cross and the World Health Organization to intervene immediately to protect patients and medical staff.
The Euro-Mediterranean Observatory reported that the Israeli occupation forces stormed Kamal Udwan Hospital in northern Gaza, escalating the destruction of the region's healthcare system and imposing deadly conditions on Palestinians, amounting to genocide. This morning, forces surrounded the hospital and ordered its director, Dr. Hussam Abu Safiya, to gather patients, the injured, and the medical staff in the courtyard within 15 minutes. Contact with those inside was later lost. Repeated attacks on hospitals and the killing of staff and patients highlight a failure of international organizations to fulfill their responsibilities.
At least 50 Palestinians, including 5 doctors from Kamal Udwan Hospital, were killed when Zionist forces shelled a building nearby. The hospital director confirmed the deaths of the pediatrician, laboratory technicians, and another doctor who was trying to save the wounded. He called for urgent international intervention to protect civilians and healthcare workers. Civil defense teams in Gaza recovered 15 mortars after Zionist forces bombed a Palestinian family home housing 40 people at dawn on Friday. The civil defense reported that 25 others remain trapped under the rubble. Most of the buildings targeted in northern Gaza were sheltering displaced people. Three Palestinians were killed in an occupation drone strike on the Shati refugee camp northwest of Gaza City. Occupation aircraft also targeted a house in the Sabra neighborhood south of Gaza City, killing 5 Palestinians and injuring 3. Civil defense teams recovered the mortars from the Harara family's home near the Istijaba Mosque. Meanwhile, occupation aircraft launched another strike on the intelligence area northwest of Gaza City. Palestinian doctor Ahmed al-Zaharna was martyred on Friday morning due to severe cold in the displacement tent in Al-Mawasi west of Khan Yunis. The Gaza Ministry of Health confirmed that al-Zaharna, A staff member at the Gaza European hospital died from the harsh conditions faced by the displaced people in the region. The ministry added that his body was found inside his tent.
لدينا في قطاع غزة حالات وفيات من أطفال رضع.
In Gaza, several heartbreaking cases have emerged of infants under 1-month-old dying from the cold. 4 such cases have reached hospitals, with the babies frozen from the harsh cold. Tragically, a colleague with 35 years of service, without chronic conditions or symptoms, was found frozen to death in his tent. These deaths are a direct result of the Israeli occupation and its ongoing siege, which blocks even the most basic necessities of life from entering Gaza.
UNICEF warned of a rise in deaths among Palestinian children and infants living in tents and temporary shelters due to cold temperatures. Edward Better, UNICEF's regional director of the Middle East and North Africa, stressed that the threats facing Gaza's children persist, with temperatures expected to drop further, putting more children at risk due to inhumane conditions and lack of cold protection. 37 Palestinians were killed and 98 others were injured in 3 massacres by the Zionist forces in the past 24 hours. The Gaza Ministry of Health announced on Friday that the total death toll from the ongoing Zionist occupation war in Gaza has reached 45,436 martyrs and 108,038 injured since October 7th of last year. Dozens of Palestinian journalists held a protest in northern Gaza condemning the Zionist occupation forces' assassination of 5 of their colleagues in the Nusayrat camp. In the face of the ongoing genocide for 14 months, the journalists called on the world to act and stop the occupation from targeting reporters simply for documenting the truth in the Gaza Strip.
Today, as journalists and media personnel, including the team of Al-Quds, Al-Yom TV, we gather to condemn a heinous Israeli attack. Occupation forces targeted an external broadcasting vehicle belonging to the channel, resulting in the assassination of 5 of its dedicated journalists and crew members. Despite the profound pain and grief we endure daily in this conflict, we reaffirm our commitment to carrying out our journalistic duty. The loss of our colleagues is not just an attack on journalism, but also a tragic blow to humanity and the conscience of the world.
The Qassam Brigades carried out a commando operation with an explosive belt against the Zionist force east of Jabalia camp, resulting in deaths and injuries. The brigades reported that one fighter detonated the explosive belt, targeting 5 soldiers. The statement added that the operation led to 2 Zionist soldiers being sniped as soon as rescue forces approached the location. The Palestinian prisoners group confirmed that 88 Palestinian female prisoners are currently held in Zionist prisons, including 30 mothers, 22 administrative detainees, and 2 minors. The club reported harsh conditions, particularly in Dammam prison, where 4 women from Gaza are detained, with others subjected to enforced disappearance. Since the start of the extermination war, the occupation has significantly escalated arrests of women and increased crimes and attacks against them. The Houthi group in Yemen announced on Friday that it targeted Ben Gurion Airport in Tel Aviv in the occupied Palestinian territories with a hypersonic ballistic missile. Houthi military spokesman Yahya Saree confirmed in a video statement that a missile, a Palestine II type, successfully hit the airport in the occupied Jaffa region, despite the occupation's efforts to conceal the strike.
نفذت القوة الصاروخية في القوات المسلحة اليمنية.
The missile force of the Yemeni armed forces carried out a specific military operation targeting Ben Gurion Airport in the occupied area of Jaffa using a hypersonic ballistic missile of Palestine II type. The missile succeeded in reaching its target despite the enemy's censorship, and the operation resulted in casualties and the cessation of navigation at the airport.
Moving on to Lebanon now, the national news agency reported on Friday that Zionist forces blew up houses in the border town of Yaroun in the south, continuing to violate the ceasefire agreement with Lebanon. The occupation had earlier targeted infrastructure at the Janta border point between Syria and Lebanon, claiming it was used to smuggle weapons to Hezbollah. The occupation also targeted Ait al-Shab and Qusayya in the Biqa' Valley. The Lebanese Civil Defense Directorate General announced on Friday that 2 martyrs' bodies were recovered from the site of the Zionist aggression on the Jalahiyya neighborhood in Khiyam, Upper Galilee. The statement added that search and rescue teams transferred the bodies to Marji Ayoun Governmental Hospital and would continue to search the following day for other missing persons. Lebanese Prime Minister Najib Mikati's media office denied reports that mediation had informed Lebanon the occupation forces would not withdraw from the south after the truce. The office stated the information was baseless and reaffirmed Lebanon's position, urging sponsors to pressure the occupation to withdraw. It also emphasized the Lebanese army's efforts to strengthen its presence in the south as per the ceasefire agreement.
Media reports are circulating claiming that Lebanon was informed indirectly that Israel will not withdraw from the south after the 60-day truce period. This information is completely false. Prime Minister Mikati has consistently communicated Lebanon's firm stance to all concerned parties, including the United States and France, the sponsors of the ceasefire agreement. Lebanon demands pressure on the Israeli enemy to withdraw from Lebanese territories it has invaded and to cease its violations and hostile actions.
The UN Security Council held a close consultation on Friday regarding the situation in Syria. Earlier this month, the Security Council emphasized the need for a Syrian-led political process to meet Syrians' aspirations while reaffirming commitment to Syria's sovereignty, unity, and territorial integrity.
The result?
On behalf of the A3+ group, Algeria welcomed the UN Security Council's adoption of the African Union Mission for Support and Stabilization in Somalia. In a speech, Algeria's UN representative Ammar Benjama stated that the mission is a crucial step in Somalia's state-building and stability efforts, supporting the Somali government's initiatives.
And my own country, Algeria.
For their statement. And I now.
Today's resolution marks an important milestone in Somalia's pathway in consolidating state building and stability. We are confident that the deployment of the African Union Support and Stabilization Mission, AUSOM, will be a clear added value in the security landscape and a crucial support for the efforts deployed by the federal government of Somalia.
Algeria's permanent representative to the UN emphasized that the adoption of the African Union mission in Somalia is a test for the international community in supporting the Union's efforts to address its security challenges.
The A3+, guided by the African Union, have expressed their support to the hybrid option for the implementation of the Framework Resolution 2719 as the only viable and applicable option for the case of AUSOM during the phases of the mission. We defended the path while insisting on the imperative to ensure predictability, sustainability, and flexibility.
To Russia-Ukraine file now, Moscow emphasized that a temporary truce or war freeze won't resolve the conflict, while Kiev continues to seek increased military support from its Western allies. Hussein Burkan reports.
As the war in Ukraine approaches its third year, its devastating impact continues to ripple across Europe and the world, with international efforts to find a resolution faltering. Moscow views the conflict as a necessity rather than a choice. While fears of nuclear escalation grow amidst divisions between the outgoing and incoming U.S. administrations. Russia rejects proposals for ceasefire or freezing the conflict, labeling them as Western maneuvers to rearm Ukraine. Instead, Moscow insists on a legally binding agreement that ensures its security and that of its neighbors. It argues that a permanent solution, rather than a temporary truce, is the only way to achieve lasting stability in the region.
Нас не может устроить.
We cannot be satisfied with empty talk. So far, all we hear is talk about the need to come up with some kind of truce, and it is not particularly hidden that this truce is needed in order to gain time to continue pumping Ukraine with weapons so that they can get themselves in order, carry out additional mobilization, and so on. A truce is a road to nowhere. We need final legal agreements that will fix all the conditions for ensuring the security for the Russian Federation and, of course, the legitimate security interests of our neighbors, but in a context that will secure the impossibility of violating these agreements in an internationally legal manner.
Western nations and NATO, however, appears focused on freezing the conflict without offering long-term legal assurance. Russia remains skeptical, citing past breaches of trust such as NATO expansion despite the promises to the contrary. As Donald Trump prepares to assume the U.S. presidency again, promising to end the war within 24 hours, anticipation grows in Kiev and Western capitals over the future of the crisis. However, doubts linger about whether any initiative can put an end to a war that has reshaped global security dynamics.
In a related matter, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky urged the U.S. and its Western allies to speed up military aid deliveries, saying it is crucial to stabilizing Ukraine and countering Russian attacks. In Thursday's address, he emphasized the need for stronger military and diplomatic support to achieve peace.
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці, українки. Перше,
It is very important that the United States is now increasing supplies. This is needed to level the situation. I am grateful to the partners, and the pace of supplies should be delivered to slow down the pace of Russian assaults. We need greater weapons power and strong positions for diplomacy, and every unit, every brigade that provides this brings us closer to the possibility of normal peace.
нам потрібна більша сила.
To a different matter now, German President Frank-Walter Steinmeier announced the dissolution of parliament and scheduled early elections for February 23rd. The decision follows Chancellor Olaf Scholz's request after losing a confidence vote on December 16 and the collapse of the ruling coalition, which includes the Social Democratic Party, Green Party, and Free Democratic Party.
Dear fellow citizens, I have decided today to dissolve the 20th German Bundestag and to schedule new elections for 23rd February next year. A letter to this effect has just been handed over to the President of the German Bundestag.
South Korea's parliament impeached acting President Han Duck-soo on Friday following his decision not to appoint 3 justices to the Constitutional Court bench, which is currently reviewing President Yoon Suk-yeol's impeachment case. The motion, led by opposition parties, passed with 192 of the 300 votes amid rowdy scenes by the ruling People Power Party members who surrounded the Speaker's podium while chanting that the vote was invalid and that the parliament had committed tyranny.
I announced that Prime Minister Han Duck-soo's impeachment motion was passed. Out of the 192 lawmakers who voted, 192 voted to impeach.
가결됐음을 선포합니다.
And finally, to a lighter note, the Palestinian feature film From Zero Distance was longlisted for the Oscar for Best International Feature Film at the 97th Academy Awards. The film, comprising 22 short films by Gaza-based directors, documents the Zionist war of extermination since October 7, 2023. It is among 15 films selected from 85 nominees for the competition. That's the end of our news program for tonight. Thank you for tuning in. Till next time, good night.